three guests today, fabulous three guests. First of all, we've got Giulia from the British Library. Hello, Giulia. Lovely to have you, and thank you so much for agreeing today. And Giulia is the curator of digital publications, and she's going to be talking to us about digital literature and interactive storytelling, and it's going to be very interesting. Can't wait to hear more from Giulia. We've also got Rhian Isaac, who's waving now at everyone, and she's our collections manager for Leeds Libraries, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about our collections and how you can access them. We've also got Izzy Bartley, and she's digital, oh my gosh, I always forget your title. She's digital learning officer for Leeds Museums, and she looks after MyLearning. So she's going to talk to you a little bit about that today. Okay, so we wanted to create these talks so that we could connect with our audiences during lockdown, share ideas, resources, and mainly just keep connected, and that's why we've got everyone's faces. You do not have to keep your video on today if you don't want to, if you're being shy, still in your pajamas, that kind of thing, absolutely fine. And do feel free to have cups of tea and sandwiches as we go through this talk. Okay, so enough of me talking. I'm going to introduce you to our first talker, who is Rhian Isaac.
Hello, I think I'm off mute now, so I'm just going to try and share my screen. And here's my first slide. So, hi everyone, I'm the collections manager for Central Library, which means that I mainly work with our rare books and special collections. So that's really my first confession, is that I almost entirely only work with traditional physical books. So a bit unlike Giulia and Izzy, who are talking next. But I'm really interested in how we can use new technologies to reuse and reinterpret our collections. So we've had lots of discussions really recently about how we can encourage people to create games or interactive stories inspired by our collections. So I'm really excited to hear Giulia talk about how she collects this kind of material. So we have done a bit of digitisation, so we have a bit of a programme going on, but we've still got so much work to do, especially to try and make these accessible. Move my slides. Oop. So we have got some of our items on Flickr, and this includes the Alice Cliff Scatcherd scrapbook, which is an amazing scrapbook of all sorts of things. She was an early suffragist from Morley, and again, it's great to just have a browse and have a look through. We've also got these amazing 19th century political cartoons from elections in Leeds. And these are really beautiful magic lantern slides. So again, free to browse, have a look at, and use however you want. Of course, our biggest online platform is Leodis, our photographic archive of Leeds. And this has over 60,000 images, and more are being added every day. And the Leodis Collections website is really quite neat. It brings together lots of these images into different themes. So if you're feeling a bit nostalgic about going to the pub or going to the shops, it's great to have a little look around those. If you haven't seen this before, another great section of Leodis is the Leeds Playbill collections. And these are the digitised images of the amazing collection that we have at Central Library. And the playbills date back to the 18th century and are from all the different theatres in Leeds that have come and gone over the past few hundred years. And even circus playbills like the ones on the screen now. So lots of stories there for you to explore. But there are lots of items that we have digitised that unfortunately haven't got a home online yet. That's something we're working towards. So there's these fantastic fashion plates from the Sanderson collection. Beautiful botanical illustrations from the Gotha Quest. And these are particularly stunning when they've been digitised. And then my favourite, four-footed beasts. And this combines supernatural creatures alongside just everyday animals. And this was one of our star items for our Harry Potter exhibition, which we did with the British Library a few years ago. Then we also have some weird and wonderful items that have been digitised. This is a book of witchcraft, which is full of newspaper cuttings. as well as an untranscribed manuscript notes as part of the book, which I think would be a fantastic project for someone to go through and actually find out what's in this book. But we have had lots of people who have used our collections in lots of really nice creative ways, but these have mostly been physical artwork that's been on display in the building, like Alice Smith's mural that she did for the Suffrage Centenary in 2018. But I still think there's lots of potential for people to do other creative stuff. So I think the more we digitise and get them online, the more people will use them. And so I'm really excited to see what people could do with our collections. So that's it from me. So I think I'm going to pass on to Izzy, who has actually been doing some amazing stuff with the museum collections. Thank you.
Sorry, Izzy, can you unmute if that's okay?
Yeah, there, has it worked? So I've been pressing the button. Hello, my name is Izzy, and yes, I'm the Digital Learning Officer from Leeds Museums and Galleries. Part of my role at LMG is to manage MyLearning. Sorry, my dog has just decided to rip up a big box right here. So if you can hear that, I don't know if you can hear that. So MyLearning is a website, it's a hub website. It hosts resources for teachers or for homeschooling parents and carers, and all the resources on MyLearning are created by arts, cultural and heritage organisations from around the country. Everything on here is curriculum linked. So our mission in MyLearning is to get all the fabulous objects and wonderful artifacts and archive documents out of cultural organisation stores and into classrooms and into homes. So it is Arts Council funded, and it's a non-profit, and it's managed by Leeds Museums and Galleries, which is where Leeds comes in. So the homepage here, I'm going to give you a real whistle-stop tour of MyLearning because there's over 240 learning stories on here. But I just want to show you what is here, and then we have Rhian and I have a little challenge for you should you wish to accept it. So it's designed for teachers, so it's designed to be very easy for them to find what they need, or if you're just looking for some information or you're interested in learning some history or some stories. It covers the whole curriculum actually. You can come here and search for it. And the way that it works, I'm going to test my internet here. So you can search by keyword, you can search by media type, you can search by theme and key stage. But if I type in Egypt, what you'll see is here we've got 6 stories. Now these come from 4 different cultural organisations from across the country, and they cover different themes. So we've got an Egyptian mummy, an eye, daily life, mummification, death and the afterlife. But if you're just after some fabulous images that you want to use, you can just come across here and click images. And what that does is it pulls all the images from those 6 stories together in one place. So you don't have to go scrolling through, I'm just going to get into this, scrolling through those 6 stories to see if it's got an image that you want to use. So that's a really nice way to use it. And also if there are any videos or interactors of a document, so downloads, worksheets, activity ideas attached, you'll see them there. So we have a few collections actually on MyLearning. So we hold the M&S archive. So M&S obviously originates in Leeds, and we've got some collections about the war, and then we also have the Leeds curriculum. So this is a place-based curriculum. It's actually an award-winning curriculum from the Museum and Heritage Awards, Educational Initiative of the year, last year. And the idea is that there will be 50 stories for primary school kids. And the idea is that you can teach across the whole of the primary curriculum, but through a Leeds lens. So if a teacher in Leeds comes onto MyLearning and they're looking at Romans, for example, they can find several generic Romans resources about Roman Empire, Roman soldiers, trade, and then they can also find Romans in Leeds. What impact did the Romans have in Leeds specifically? So that's the idea of it there. We also have some, sorry, that's really annoying. Don't need to edit my account. So you can access everything on MyLearning for free. You do not have to log in. If you choose to log in, you can, if you're a teacher, for example, or you're a homeschooling parent, you can set your key stage and subject preferences. And then on the home page, you will get a feed through with all these stories that match what you've chosen there. And we also have some of these interactive images on here, which is a lovely way to either introduce or to recap a theme or a subject, and they can link through to videos and audio as well. So we have various things on here. We have a range of digital interactives as well, everything from Victorian jobs and suffragettes through to making a superbug, and some other STEM ones about forces and light. So we have lots of stuff on here. And right at the beginning of lockdown, there was a bit of a lull before inundation. And I'm really interested in how we can repurpose some of this content to make digital interactive, or to make stories, and different ways of using this content that's here. So we have so much content. And that's why I'm also really excited to hear Giulia's talk. So in the first week, I created this very basic digital, it's based on a digital escape game, but it's all using content from MyLearning. So there's a bit of a narrative here about you're stuck inside all day, you don't know what to do, so you climb in this big cupboard that you find in the house and you find this box. But every time you go and open the box, this lock appears, and it's all about solving the clues to be able to unlock the box. So you get a bit of a narrative here and a bit of a story, and then it introduces 4 challenges, and all these all link through to resources on MyLearning. So there's no advertising on MyLearning, there's no marketing, so it is a safe place for students to go and pupils to go and do the research. So yes, the idea is you go there, you find all the answers, you put them in the code cracker sheet here, and if you're correct, then it opens up. I'm not going to tell you what it opens up, a big surprise. But you can crack the code that way. So that was something that I'm really interested in looking at how we can use this content here. So inspired by Rhian's collections, which we have quite a lot of the Leodis images on MyLearning, and now I want everything that I've just seen in her PowerPoint on MyLearning. We have a challenge for you with the with the content that we've shown you, and after Giulia's amazing talk that she's going to inspire you with, what we'd like to do is challenge you to create your own story using some of these resources. So we'll send this out, or Claire, I said we, Claire will send this out to you with links on it, to Leeds Libraries and MyLearning and the Leeds curriculum. Doesn't have to be Leeds based, but there are links there to lots and lots of content that you could use, and we'd be super interested to see what you create if you decide to take on this challenge. And there are just some ideas of platforms that you could use there. So there's 3 digital ones. There's Scratch, where you can code games and animations, Twine, which is an online interactive story creator, and Google Sites, which is where I made the escape game. Again, that's free. All of those are free. Or you could go old school and create a physical mini book for the British Library, as they are doing their mini book creation challenge, which is fab as well. And I've just put our Twitter handles there. If you do anything, we'd love to see it. We'd be super excited to see it. And then Rhian and my Twitter handles are there as well. That's it from me. And I'm like, yeah, I want to hear what Giulia's got to say.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you so much, Rhian and Izzy. Yeah, we do a lot of work with our collections and our young people and families, and we usually do hacks and things and give them challenges relating to the collections, which means then we can hopefully display those in our exhibitions. We've done one as part of Making Your Mark with the British Library, and we had the Code Clubs do a Morse code for that, and with little micro bits, and it made the exhibition really interactive because people could come and play with that. So thank you so much. I just want to say hello to Natasha from Empowering Women in Sky. If you are interested in women in tech, Natasha's your lady. And if you want any more information about the Empowering Women network, do let me know. Just gonna let Giulia take it away. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Claire. I'll just try to share. Does it allow me to do it? Yeah. Should be fine. Okay, hopefully you can all see this. So yeah, hello everyone, and thank you all for coming. It's really great to see so many people interested in digital storytelling. And thank you, Claire, for organizing this and for inviting me. My name is Giulia Carla Rossi, and I'm curator for digital publications at the British Library. And I'm here today to talk about digital literature and interactive storytelling and the British Library approach to collecting and preserving this type of complex digital publications. So, yeah. You might know this already, but the British Library is the National Library of the UK and is one of 6 legal deposit libraries in the UK and Republic of Ireland. We have over 150 million items, both at our London side and Yorkshire side. And if you saw 5 items a day, it would take you 80,000 years to see the whole collection. So good luck with that. And that's why we work a lot with digitization in order to open up our collection. But we also work a lot with born digital publications. So now more than ever, there are new technologies and tools and formats to create digital publication and kind of shaping how audiences consider a book. I should say that we don't currently have a mechanical raven or a patronizer robot in our collection, but maybe one day, hopefully. But things like ebooks and digital books published as PDFs have a structure that is quite similar to physical books. But what happens when we actually expand our thinking and identify other publications that are still book-like without necessarily looking like a book? So what we actually have been looking at are stories that use new technologies and platforms to deliver a narrative that couldn't be replicated in any other way. So these are usually apps or web-based interactive narratives, which include a mix of format types. So they might have a mix of video, audio, and text. And they're often used this in very new and experimental ways as well. And we're interested in the impact that this new technology has on writing as well as reading. So just not only how new technologies change the way that authors write, but also how these have an impact on the reading experience. And how can cultural institutions like the British Library ensure that these examples of highly interactive digital writing are collected and preserved? So a little bit of background, the whole project started in response to non-print legal deposit regulations, which came into force in 2013. So print legal deposit in the UK has existed since 1662. But in 2003, for the first time, the Legal Deposit Act included non-print works alongside print. And the regulation came into force 10 years later, so in 2013. And since then, the UK legal deposit libraries have been collecting various types of born digital publications, mainly comprising ebooks, e-journals, and the UK Web Archive. But relatively recently, we started collecting geospatial dataset and digital music notation as well. Just very briefly about the UK Web Archive, because I've worked very closely with their team to capture some of the emerging formats in our collection. The UK Web Archive collects millions of websites every year that are captured by the British Library on behalf of the 6 UK legal deposit libraries. And each year they make one broad crawl of the UK domain to capture all websites with a UK top level suffix, plus any other that have been identified as hosted or based in the UK. And he also has curated collections of websites around a particular topic or a theme. So the goal of Nonprint Legal Deposit is to help ensure comprehensive collecting of UK publications. And all 6 legal deposit libraries, and you can see the logos at the bottom of the slide, all 6 legal deposit libraries came together like as a collaborative effort. And we are now looking at digital publications that are in scope for collection under Nonprint Legal Deposit, but whose formats are more complex than what we currently have in our collection, and it could also be challenging for our existing collecting practices. And these type of complex digital publications are what we actually call emerging formats. So what exactly are emerging formats? We kind of identified a few characteristics to help us define emerging formats. So they're usually born digital publications that don't have a print counterpart. So they can't really be replicated in print without affecting the meaning of the publication and the user experience as well. They often consist of more than one media type. So like a mix of film, audio, and text usually. They often require specific devices to enable access and a meaningful user experience as well. They are often comprised of non-standard formats and metadata types. They're not typically part of existing collections, even in other collecting institutions, and they are at risk of rapid obsolescence due to the rapid changes in the digital marketplace. So the legal deposit libraries have decided to prioritize certain types of formats. And the first one is book as mobile apps. These are sometimes called literary apps as well. And basically they're digital books published as mobile apps. They often make use of interactive functionality typical of mobile technology. And they often rely quite heavily on the specific hardware and software that were originally designed for. So example of these, of books as mobile apps, can often be found in children's literature. And these are usually very interactive and kind of game-like. Nosy Crow has quite a lot of like adaptations of children's literature classics like Little Red Riding Hood and Goldilocks and Snow White. And all of these are very engaging, and they kind of ask readers to interact with specific feature of the mobile device they're reading on. So for example, like the microphone or the camera, in order to progress with the story. Other examples are things like the Wasteland app by Faber and Faber and Touch Press, which is not just a digital edition of T.S. Eliot's work, but actually includes a lot of interactive features like audio readings and videos and interactive notes. And similarly, the Solar System app, which is also a collaboration between Faber and Faber and Touch Press. And that's a kind of interactive exploration of the solar system. And it has like 3D models and images and diagrams and things like that. In terms of apps that we collected, we also collected files for Inkle's 80 Days, which is an interactive narrative adventure that was originally published as a mobile app. And it's loosely based on Around the World in 80 Days, but it kind of has like a steampunk post-colonial twist. And it has been kind of trickier for us to collect apps compared to other examples of emerging formats, because we don't really have an established workflow for these type of formats. But we collected the Android app, as well as both Windows and macOS versions of the PC version. And the direct collaboration we had with Inkle was massively helpful, as they gave us access to their source code, which was then downloaded from their version control online repository. And we are also kind of interested in contextual information around a publication. So it's a kind of like descriptive material that can give a sense of the original look and feel of a publication. It also helps us clarify authorial intent and the context. And you also provide instruction on how to use a specific publication, especially when a specific type of technology becomes obsolete with time. This descriptive material can also work as an alternative to collecting the original artifact when the object itself couldn't be collected, or if there are no access options available, for example. And it's kind of thing that can include like press kit and promotional material, as well as web pages like the publisher website, or reviews of blog posts, or in the case of apps, even like the Google Play Store web page or the App Store web page, or even video capture from use of the publication. So the second format we decided to focus on was web-based interactive narratives. And these are kind of text-based stories that expect the reader to make decisions in order to determine how the narrative will unfold. And they share some interactive features with mobile apps. But this format is web-based and not packaged as an app. So you don't usually download them, but you experience them in a browser. So with the help of Linda Clark, who was our AHRC postdoctoral innovation placement for interactive fiction, we created an interactive narratives collection on the UK Web Archive, using web archiving tools to capture this kind of web-based interactive fiction. So it's part of the bigger e-publishing trends and emerging formats umbrella collection. And it includes 186 websites and counting as we keep adding to it. And all this narrative kind of includes a mix of text and sound and video elements, and also present different types of interactions. Like there are hypertext narratives, which have links that you have to click on in order to progress with the narrative, or parser-based, where you have to type in commands, or choice-based, where you have multiple choices to choose from. And most of these entries in this interactive narratives collection are only available to access on library premises because of Nonprint legal deposit regulations. But luckily, since this is a kind of contemporary collection, most of the publications are still live and can be accessed on their original website. So I would say that this collection can be used as a sort of directory at the moment, while the library is still closed. And a little bit about the web archiving tools that we use to create this collection. So Heritrix is the main web crawler used by the UK Web Archive. It basically allows us to target websites that we want to include in our collection, and to harvest like an instance of each website. It's especially good when dealing with huge volumes of websites. So it's what is used for the annual domain crawl. Web Recorder instead is a free web archiving service developed by Rhizome. And that creates an interactive copy of any web page that you browse, and it's especially good to capture dynamic content, like things like video and audio. This is a quote by Anna Anthropy from her book, Rise of the Video Game Zinster, which is a book that I personally really like. And it kind of speaks to the fact that there are many tools now to create interactive narratives. And all these tools can be free and don't really require much coding knowledge to use. And this book was written 8 years ago, so we now have even more of these kind of tools. And digital interactive fiction is something that is often created by and for a pretty wide variety of audiences that often include various marginalized groups as well. So during her placement, Linda also conducted some data analysis on the narratives that she collected, including genre, interaction patterns, and as you can see here, like the tools the writer used to create interactive fiction in the UK. And I'll be mentioning in more detail 2 of these tools. They take up like 2 big slices of this pie. So the first one that Izzy also mentioned is Twine. And Twine is the most used interactive fiction writing tool in our interactive narratives collection. It's an open source tool to write like text-based non-linear narratives. It's a kind of like choose your own adventure like stories. The output you get is like an hypertext narrative. It's something where you click on links that take you to another passage or branching into different directions. And you can use it without really knowing how to code, as the standard Twine structure only requires you to type text and put brackets around the phrases that will then become the links in the story. And I've included a couple of links to tutorials, and I think that Claire will circulate the slides after the talk. Great. And also a link to The Memory Archivist, which was written using Twine by Linda Clark during her postdoctoral placement. And it's a very interesting example because it incorporates the themes of her research into the narrative. And the second tool I'm talking about today is Bitsy, which is another freely available tool that you can find online and doesn't require any previous coding knowledge. Bitsy is a web-based editor for mini games. So it's especially good for kind of vignette games, very small games. You can set up a room or multiple rooms, an avatar and the other characters and objects that you want to interact with. So you basically draw the whole game. And again, there are a couple of links to tutorials and a link to Bargaining with Supreme Beings So They Don't Destroy Us All, which is a great title by Ash Green, who's a very prolific Bitsy author that we have in our collection. And I also wanted to mention the British Library Simulator, which is a mini game that I created during lockdown using Bitsy. And it's a slightly different take on like the virtual tour. You can wander around the British Library St. Pancras building and kind of interact with other very pixelated readers and members of staff and kind of learn more about some of the projects that we're working on. So there are mentions of the British Library Sound Archive and the UK Web Archive and all the kind of resources that are currently available online while the library is closed. And it's also a way to kind of bring attention to the Emerging Formats project, because it was a good way of talking about the project by offering a real example of what an interactive narrative might look like. So there are many other writing tools for interactive fiction, like Twine and Bitsy, and many of which are freely available and relatively easy to use, requiring almost no coding knowledge to operate. And these are just a few of them. But all of these kind of help making game writing accessible to a wider audience and to groups that are often underrepresented by the mainstream video game community. So for example, there are a lot of like slice of life type of games about the LGBTQ+ experience or experience of struggle with mental health. And there's a big social history value to preserve these publications. These are some other examples of what we have in our interactive narratives collection. And these are all books by Editions The Play. And Editions The Play is a collaboration between the London-based creative agency Visual Editions and the Sydney-based Google Creative Lab. And all of their creation are designed to be read on mobile devices, and they're quite innovative in the way they make use of the functionalities that are characteristics of mobile technology. So for example, you have things like a universe explode, which is the top left one, and which uses blockchain to create like unique copies of the same book. And then things like entrances and exits, which is on the right, that uses Google Street View. So you navigate through the book and find the next chapter in the book. All this rotting at the bottom left, that as you progress through the book, this text starts fading away. And Breathe, which uses data from your phone, like your location and weather and time, and it populates them into the narrative. And it creates like an extra creepy ghost story that knows where you are. This is a still from 80 Days, which I repurposed to illustrate our journey towards preservation. So we started with horizon scanning and identifying which formats are in scope for us to collect, to actually then acquire the files and material for each publication, and describe those publications to facilitate discovery and kind of provide a meaningful access experience, both in the present and in the future, and with kind of long-term preservation. And there are many challenges along the way, as you can see, all these kind of red flags, including the rapid pace at which the technology changes, the hardware and software dependencies that most of these publications have, and the fact that they are made of multiple file formats. And then things like DRM, like digital rights management, it's also kind of challenging, especially at the access stage. And tech obsolescence is also a cause for concern for us. So we do face many challenges, and we have to deal with rapid technological change and publications that are technically and structurally complex. We are trying to describe and document these publications in library catalog records to make them discoverable and ensure that kind of any loss of functionality or restrictions to access are documented, especially in cases when we couldn't capture the publication in its entirety. We also need to provide access to this publication with like adequate access technology. Sorry, I got something wrong on my computer. Right. So yeah, all of these publications have strong hardware and software dependencies. So it also might be necessary for us to collect some examples of hardware, as well as additional software to ensure that this will operate in the future as well. So why is this important? Well, cultural institutions need to represent the changing nature and diversity of UK digital culture. And rapid technological change means that complex digital publications are at risk of obsolescence if we don't collect them. But this digital shift also kind of offers us an opportunity to think about new types of library environments that could offer more meaningful access experiences to users. And also the knowledge and expertise that comes out of our research can be shared among other cultural institutions that have to deal with similar challenges like preservation of media art, for example. And I wanted to kind of end on a call to action. So anyone can nominate a website for archiving. You can visit the webpage linked at the bottom of the slide and fill in the form to nominate a website for archiving in the UK Web Archive. And if it's interactive narrative, then we can add it to the interactive narratives collection. And that's it from me. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Giulia. That was fascinating, and I love all of the games. I'm hoping that I'm going to have some time to play some of them at some point, especially the simulator. I haven't had to go on that. So anyone who wants to ask a question, please put them in chat and I will read them out for Giulia. Elvie says that's really great, thank you. And Izzy said those look really interesting, like a pervasive game, but a pervasive story. What do you mean by that, Izzy?
Oh, the additions at play stories. So the
Yeah.
pervasive games, when they came in, they were geolocated. And I found that really interesting idea of having geolocated stories, and also though taking into account the weather. I think that's really fascinating, immersive. You're on your phone, but also immersive.
Yeah.
I got excited about that.
Fabulous. We have a question from Hanlon. Can we actually play the simulator? Is it available to play?
Yes, please do. It is available. Maybe I can put a link in the chat, or otherwise I can send Claire the link and then you can circulate it. But yeah, it is available to be played. I'm very happy if people play it.
Fabulous. John says, fab presentations. My brain hurts at the thought of trying to archive the whole of the internet and the apps. And Rhian is asking, do you preserve works by only British authors?
When we preserve under non-print legal deposit, yes. Because that's what is in regulations. We do make some exceptions in certain cases. So right now I'm working on a new collection about the new media writing prize, together with Bournemouth University, and the prize is open worldwide. So there are quite a lot of entries from outside the UK. But because it is like a UK-based award, and we are collaborating with the university, we are kind of making the case that should be preserved as well. But in those cases, we need permissions from the authors in order to collect their works, while we can collect anything that is UK-based.
Brilliant. We've also got another question that kind of relates to that. From, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Gitanjali, and working in India. So joining us from India, we've really gone global today. And they say that people in India hardly know anything about digital literature. How do you collaborate as part of the British Library with other countries and let the world know about digital stories? And is it accessible to all?
So at the moment, like the Emerging Formats Project is a collaboration with the other legal deposit libraries in the UK, which also includes Trinity College in Dublin. And we are trying to make these accessible across all legal deposit libraries. And that's the case for the Interactive Narratives collection, because all legal deposit libraries have access to the UK Web Archive. But in terms of outside the UK and Ireland, we haven't really yet collaborated with other institutions. I know that the Library of Congress in the US is looking at preserving video games. And I think they mainly work with console-based games, so not online games. But they're doing like a lot of work around digital preservation. And it will be great to collaborate with them, but because it's sort of still experimental, and it's something that is quite new for a lot of institutions. I think we still don't know what we'll do next. Yeah,
that's fabulous. Stella has shared a link to some digital storytelling projects in India. So thank you very much, Stella. She knows so much, does that, Stella Wisdom. And also the link to the British Library simulator in there. So we really thank you for that. I've got another question from Ian Abbott. And he's wondering if you've done any work with voice apps, for example, Alexa, Google Home, that kind of thing.
We haven't yet. We, with the other legal deposit libraries, we try to do like horizon scanning exercises to make sure that we are aware of what like the next format emerging will be. And yeah, I mean, there are quite a lot of stories working with like Alexa and Google Home. With Nonprint's legal deposit, there are kind of some restrictions to what is in scope for us to collect. So if it's only kind of video or audio based, it's not really in scope for us to collect. So it has to have kind of a text component. But it is something interesting that I would definitely like to research more and see if we could collect some parts of them at least.
Yeah, because you can play games with your Alexa, can't you? It's quite
and I mean, there are quite a lot of stories that you can access with that. And I think actually Editions at Play now, their latest project was something that worked with Google Home, I think. And you had like stories of splendid isolation, I think it was called. And different like essays and short stories read by famous authors that you can listen to while on lockdown. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Bowman's putting some points in about how it's scripted and it's spoken aloud. So we did Empower Women actually had a talk about voice and chat box and things. It was really interesting. I think there's a lot of use for it in the future. I don't think we've quite got the hang of it yet. It's not as personal possibly as we need it to be yet. So yeah, I think there is a lot of work to do with that. It's quite a complicated subject. And we've got a question for contact information from you, Giulia, and the other people who are working on this project. Am I okay to share that for you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I in the last slide, I had my email and Twitter handle. But yeah, if people are interested in knowing more, get in contact.
Yeah, fabulous. And Stella's sharing a great link again to Women Reclaiming AI project. So that might be interesting to people as well. Any other questions? Let me just see if I've missed anything. Oh, someone said they missed the library. We do too, very much so. Okay. I think we may have gone through all of the questions at the moment, but I'll just tell you a little information. And Stella says she's loved all of the presentations as well. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your support, Stella. So behind me is our Libraries from Home offer. So you can always access that at the moment whilst we're in lockdown and when we go forward as well. And that's at leeds.gov.uk/libraries. There's all sorts on there. As you can see, there's reading, ebooks, all free of charge. We have no fines anymore, so you don't need to worry about that. We share resources for people who are doing homeschooling at the moment, and also information about our digital inclusion scheme, which works really, really hard to provide tablets to the most vulnerable in our communities, and they have been nominated for an award. So I'm going to send you the details, so please vote for that so that we can win for Leeds. Would be very much appreciated of that. They work so hard. So I think that's pretty much everything. So I'll just double check no one has any other questions. I think we're all good. So I just want to thank our speakers. Giulia, you've been absolutely wonderful, really fascinating subject, and really, really connects to where we are now, where we're needing to access these games and digital resources and preserve them for the future as well. Thank you to Rhian and Izzy, you wonderful, wonderful people, for telling us about Leeds Museums, MyLearning, and our collections at Leeds Libraries as well. And I do hope you can join us in creating your own game and sharing it with us at Leeds Libraries and at MyLearning as well. And again, I will send out all of this information to you. I'll try and remember everything, but if I do miss anything, please do reply to me and ask me for the details, and I'll send that out to you. And that will include the recording, the slides, and any links that we've spoken about as well. Our next talk is next Thursday, 12 till 1 again, and it's with Sally Bogg, and she's going to be talking to us about top tips on how to get into the tech sector and her learning. And she's just got a new job at NHS Digital, so that'll be really interesting to hear about as well. And that's on the same event page. Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. Love to everyone.